Thank you so much, Lisa. I've never heard anybody else sing my song before, and to hear it sung and played like that this particular morning in this particular community after this particular day I've had, I'm, it literally brings me to tears. I'm going to tell you right up front that I'm going to get a little over enthusiastic today talking about gratitude because Lisa sang the song for me. But also, yesterday morning when we woke up, my wife beside me was having what I thought was a stroke. It turned out to be a seizure, but for 15, 20 minutes, she was shaking and unconscious and just I've never been so scared in my life, and I called 911, and the ambulance came. In less than 10 minutes, it felt like years. It just went, and she was just shaking and gray and unable to communicate. And in that moment, you know, just it's. Couldn't help but wonder, is this the end for me and my beautiful partner, Zette? We've been together for 45 years, best friends since the first day we met, and then been married for 43. And to be brought right to the brink of that loss, no kidding, watching her being carried away by the medics. And then to find out today that she's fine and you know, there's some underlying health issues that'll be dealt with and who knows what. But I left her just an hour ago and she's cheerful and moving around and just her normal self. And I'm just, I'm just so grateful. And to be talking about loaves and fishes today is just so perfect. Mark Twain was arguably one of the most famous men in the 19th century in America. Samuel Clemens was his real name, as most of us know. Mark Twain was his pen name. And one day he was at dinner, a big formal dinner, and seated next to him was a very pompous minister who tried to get him to talk about the Bible and about Scripture, even though he knew perfectly well from his writings that Samuel Clemens had profound troubles with church and with politics and anything that smacked of authority. And at one point, the minister turned to him and said, "Mr. Clemens, aren't you disturbed about how little you know about the Bible?" And Sam Clemens turned to the minister and said, "On the contrary, sir, what disturbs me is the little I do know of the Bible." And that goes for me too. I know very little about the Bible. I've studied it. You know, I've done my work theologically over the last 50 years. 40 years ago, a dear friend gave me this Bible just before I started my work with Celebration Circle, and you know, I've got marked up stickies on, you know, maybe 20 passages that I tend to go to again and again. And for the rest, the Bible is often a mystery to me. But I believe that the tale of the loaves and the fishes is meant to disturb us in a good way, but disturbing nonetheless. Disturb coming from the Latin disturbare, turba, meaning disorder. So disturbance is to throw into disorder. And I believe this teaching of the loaves and fishes can throw us into profound disorder to the extent that we tend to order our lives here in America, in Western culture, in this materialistic world we live in, on a basis of scarcity and struggle and separation from source. And this story of the loaves and fishes would disturb that foundation and call us into a profound realization of the truth of our connection to source. As far as I know, and again, I don't claim to be a biblical scholar, although I've done my fair amount of coursework and studying. But as far as I know, the story of the loaves and fishes is the only incident associated with Jesus that is told almost identically in all four Gospels. Throughout the New Testament, the four Gospels, which we now know through biblical scholarly research, were written at different times with different needs to address different communities living in that time and in that place. We call the Holy Land, in a period from approximately 30 years after Jesus' death to 200 years after Jesus' death. Those Gospels were written with different needs by different people at different times and told different versions of different stories. Even the story of Jesus' birth and death and resurrection are told slightly differently in all four Gospels. But this one story of the loaves and fishes is told identically. In each of the four Gospels, Jesus and his disciples have been very busy. In three of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the story begins with Jesus and his disciples finding out about the death of John the Baptist and the beheading of John the Baptist and being disturbed by that. But in all four versions of the Gospel, Jesus and his disciples were beset with cares and the needs of people and their ministry, their discipleship. And in all four versions, Jesus said something like, "Let us go away by ourselves and rest a while." And as they withdrew into the countryside, what happened? Well, thousands of people heard they were in the countryside. This was at the height of Jesus' teachings. And they came and wanted more. They were hungry for spiritual food. And by the thousands, they came and surrounded Jesus and his disciple in this time and place when they were trying to rest and withdraw and recharge their batteries. Instead, there were all these people who were hungry for spiritual food. And then as the day grew toward a close, they were also hungry for material food. So what did Jesus do? He, by the accounts of all four Gospels, took inventory of what resources they had on hand and found out that there were 5 loaves and 2 fishes to feed thousands of people. And then he took it and blessed it, gave thanks for what he had on hand. And then he broke it and gave it to his disciples to be distributed to the crowd. And in all 4 accounts, there was lots of food left over after all had eaten their fill. So let me review this process for a second. And as far as I'm concerned, it was a process that Jesus was following. A process that I would call radical gratitude, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. But the first thing that we know about this story is that Jesus and his disciples, presumably, wanted one thing. They wanted to be alone. They wanted to be rest. They wanted a chance to rest from their troubles and their worries and their work. Does that sound familiar? And then they were surrounded by people and the need to do more work. Hungry people, needy people, wanting their time and attention and energy. Does that sound familiar? That ever happened to you? And then Jesus, our teacher and way shower, took stock of the situation. He didn't complain. He didn't worry. He didn't send out for supplies or support. He simply asked, what do we have on hand? And the answer is 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And for those of you who've been to the Middle East, you know that the loaves they were talking about were basically flatbreads, focaccia, pizza, we might call it, tortillas. They're not big, they're flat. 5 loaves, 2 fishes. He took stock of what was available, and then he blessed it, gave thanks for it just the way it was, and then, very importantly, he took a small action by taking and breaking the bread and giving it to his disciples. He did not try himself to feed 5,000 people. He took what he had in his hand, and from a place of groundedness and presence and gratitude, he broke it and gave it to the disciples, who then spread it out to feed the other people. I say that Jesus was practicing the process of radical gratitude, which I define as a process of feeling grateful as an embodied physical experience of metaphysical principles. So this is an important point for those of us who have been studying metaphysics or spiritual principles, science of mind. It's easy to do the studying, not easy. The first level is to the studying and the reading and to do the believing, to absorb fully into the thought process, the idea of our connection to spirit, our constant source, our connection to the awareness that we have enough. But to actually live that experience, bring it into a bodily experience, and practice the metaphysical principles, that was beyond physical, on the physical level, to translate it into practice, is what I call radical gratitude. Radical coming from the Latin word radix, meaning connected to the earth. So radical gratitude can only be experienced in the moment. Radical gratitude is a bodily experience grounded in spiritual principles and grounded in what is, in the awareness of what is present at the very moment, knowing that this is enough. So I'd like to do a little thought experiment with you. You got 5 fingers, 5 loaves. Take a moment to think of 5 things you're grateful for in your life. Just first thought, best thought. 5 things. Name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't take too long. Got it? Okay. I would say that most of us, when we think of those 5 things, leave them at the intellectual level. We think of it, maybe we can see them, maybe we can say we're grateful for them. But now let's take one of those, take one from the list, first thought, best thought, and really focus on that thing, that person, that situation. That one thing that person, that situation that you're grateful for in your life. And feel the feelings associated with it. And feel those feelings grounded in your body. Feel it from your top of your head to the tip of your toes, through your nose and elbows, down through your belly, down through your groin, lips, legs, feet. Feel gratitude connected to the one source, the one presence, one power. Feel it flow through you as an embodied experience. This is what I would call radical gratitude, a grounded in the present moment, physically experienced gratitude. And as we practice this gratitude, we become more affluent. Affluent coming from the Latin word affluens, which means to flow abundantly. As we practice this process of radical gratitude, which Jesus the Christ demonstrated for us with his loaves and fishes, we become more affluent. As more and more goodness and life and health and well-being flow through us freely from the source through our experience out into the world. And sometimes that feels wonderful, and sometimes not so much. In my understanding, at any given moment in time, I am dealing with the four directions of the earth, the north, east, south, and west, as psychoactive, as psychosocial, energetic realities of universal archetypes. I could spend hours just talking about this, but very briefly, the notion is that any given moment, I'm facing to the south, which is the direction of the summer, of abundance, of blessings. Oh, wonderful. Health, goodness, yes, the south. But at the very same time, my body is also experiencing the energy of the west, which is the energy of autumn, of the setting sun, of sunset, of moving into darkness and death and loss and mystery and grief and change. It's all there in the west. And so too, the north is acting the direction of the winter, of the midnight, the direction of challenge. Every person, situation, moment has its own challenge. And I'm facing east, the direction of the rising sun, of spring, of new life and new possibilities unfolding in the precious present moment. Again, that's a very quick encapsulation. But so, as I turn and face in radical gratitude to whatever challenge I'm presented with, there is within that moment, as there was with Jesus, there is abundance, south. There is change and mystery. What are we going to do now with 5,000 people and only 5 loaves and fishes? There is the north. There is the challenge. Something must be done. But there's the east. There's the newness and the possibility as we remember to connect with source. And that all is new and fresh and possible now, and now, and now. Radical gratitude is what Jesus was showing us 2,000 years ago. It's what we're being asked to practice, what I'm being asked to practice today. And it is in that spirit that I'd like to close with a poem that I wrote a number of years ago. It's included in my book, Hurry Slowly. Being grateful. Being grateful, you are almost too busy for anything else. Tears well up, washing away old ghosts and shadows. Being grateful, your mind is preoccupied with more pressing ladders, so you have no need, Being grateful, your mind is preoccupied with more pressing matters, so you have no need to locate a ladder and try to get up to some higher, safer spot. You've got no time to entertain the door-to-door salesman peddling their shiny dreams of what might be, if only, if only. Being grateful you're too busy to open junk mail or clean untidy drawers, to put away dishes or answer yet another phone call or email. Being grateful you bite into an apple and a waterfall of juice runs down your chin. A thin wedge of salty cheese reminds you of those 2 carefree weeks you spent in the south of Spain way back when. Being grateful one single seedless grape causes an explosion in the middle of your tongue, and suddenly you're feeling quite young again, and logic doesn't matter quite as much as you thought it did earlier. Being grateful you are swallowed whole, and only this moment remains. I'm grateful to you for this opportunity to be here. I'm grateful for the many, many, many blessings of this day, and I bid you peace.